Today we're here at Highwards Farm at Gartaharn, part of RSPB's nature reserve here at Loch Lomond, and I'm joined by Luke Wake, the warden for the reserve, and we're going to be discussing farm wildlife walks and some of the factors that impact the habitat condition of some of the habitats that we might see on the farms across Scotland. Back at the beginning of 2020, the Farm Advisory Service decided that it was important that we engage with crofters, farmers, estates, landowners in general across Scotland, really get in deep on the issues of nature conservation to demonstrate to Scottish Government that those working in the rural sectors in Scotland do take nature conservation very seriously, and to provide an easy entry point for some of those farmers in Scotland that may not have the experience that some of the landowners that we've engaged with do have. So look, do you want to get us kicked off with a bit of an introduction of what goes on here at Highwards?
Yeah, so we manage the land here at Highwards Farm for biodiversity, for conservation value. So there's 237 hectares in total, which spans a vast array of different habitat types. So you've got species-rich grassland, you've got more of your sort of classic agricultural grassland, you've got woodlands of different types, so you've got sort of a drier oak woodland and then some wetter, more birch-dominated woodlands as well, and then that also opens out down onto the Loch Shore as well. So, and there's also the big pond. So yeah, so there's a fair bit of land and lots of different habitats that we manage here. And as I said, it's all managed for conservation value to promote biodiversity.
And look, what do you think of the concept of farm wildlife walks, and how important is it that farmers engage with the issue of nature conservation in Scotland?
I would say it's hugely important, and I'm all for it, because a lot of the land that isn't used for, say, housing or for people in general is farmland, and farms can really help support an increase in biodiversity across Scotland in a huge number of ways.
How would you describe some of the habitats that we're going to be looking at today?
So there's lots of wet habitats, that's for sure, especially today, and there's a range of dry habitats as well. Some of them are managed in a conventional way, mainly with summer grazing, and some of them are left to go a bit more rough and rugged around the edges.
So look, we've just passed the wetland. We're standing in a field that has obviously been actively managed throughout the year. I was just wondering, can you explain what has gone on? What's the management practice here?
Yeah, so the management practice here is that we cut and remove the vegetation in late summer, going into the autumn. So this field in particular was cut in late September. And the reason for that is to remove the build-up of plant material for the coming winter. It stops the nutrients going back into the soil and creates a diverse environment, because we're managing this field specifically for wildflowers. The later the cut going into late September is absolutely key for allowing the wildflowers to flourish, because you want them to be able to drop their seed before you cut them. So obviously if you cut them before they seed, then they're not going to put the seed down, so there's more in the future. For a field like this, for example, the ideal management is to have the livestock come in after the cut and graze off the grasses that grow right through into late October. And they also create wee areas of bare ground and push the seeds into the soil, so that's like absolutely perfect wildflower field management. So the story here is that this tree has basically fallen apart late summer, early autumn this year, and then we've just left it alone. I've cleared it back off the path, and that's as far as I'm going. And one of the reasons for that is because decaying wood, whether it's standing or whether it's laying on the ground, is really beneficial to wildlife, particularly to invertebrates that will then feed on the exposed dead wood. And nature actually really likes those sort of like really messy corners. In fact, the messier corners are sometimes the better they are for wildlife. So I can totally advocate for leaving as much stuff laying around like this as possible. So the area behind us is referred to as the Aber Bog, and it's part bog and it's part fen. It's mainly fen, which means that it's fed by other water sources other than just the rainwater that comes comes down from the sky. And so it's got a whole suite of different vegetation amongst it, and some of it's quite nice and special, like the meadowsweet and tufted loosestrife and cowbane and bits and pieces. But one of the vegetation types you can see behind me that's becoming a bit dominant is this reed canary grass. It's a negative indicator of this part of the site, and that's because it likes high nutrient areas, and then it tends to dry the area out as well, which is something we don't want happening. Sustainable management practice for this type of habitat behind us is ideally some sort of cut and removal and grazing in late summer and flooding out during the winter. At the moment ourselves we're thinking about how we can manage this better, and that's going to require some grazing potentially from ponies, and hydrological improvements, so keeping the area wetter would be one of those improvements we'd look at.
I've thoroughly enjoyed this afternoon. I feel like we've learnt an awful lot. We've done multiple stops on our travel down to the lochside here. On behalf of the Scottish Farm Advisory Service, thank you very much.
No bother, thanks for coming along, it's been a great day.